to work overseas.
Right.
I wanted to leave, not to leave America, but just because I had joined the Divine Word Society, Divine Word Missionaries. So I was hoping from the time I was ordained that I could work overseas. But my first appointment was in the States,
Right.
teaching in a seminary college in Iowa. But even while I was there, I was still thinking someday I hope I can work overseas. So in 1974, when I got the appointment to go to Taiwan, so it was kind of like a dream come true.
Right.
So I was eager to go. I didn't know anything much about Taiwan. I knew a little bit about it politically, from what people were talking, Chiang Kai-shek and security state, and all the restrictions and all this type of thing. And I knew that there would be restrictions that I hadn't experienced in America.
Right.
But I was eager to go. And I wanted to get into the situation as much as I could. But I was sent only for 2 years.
Right.
I was sent as an exchange professor. And after 2 years, I was supposed to go back to the college in Iowa. But my plan from the beginning was, my hope was to stay.
Right.
And I figured, well, maybe the rest of my life, So my first impressions of the country were I was just open.
Okay.
Okay, open, interested, excited with everything I saw.
Right. Okay.
So I didn't experience the kind of culture shock that some people do.
You didn't?
No, I did not. Not in the beginning. I knew some people who came, and as they were landing, people who wanted to come, but as they were landing and looking out over Taiwan, they were already getting a negative reaction. Well, I was familiar with the university from people who had been there. And in fact, 10 years before, when I was ordained, I was asked if I would be willing to work in Taiwan at the university. They were just opening, 1963. They were opening the university, and I was asked. At that time, I didn't want to go to Taiwan.
You didn't want
I did not. And the reason I didn't was because I had just finished 14 years of study to become a priest, and I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to work in a school. I wanted to work in a parish, or as what we called bush missionaries. So I volunteered for a different kind of work, which they did not give me. They put me into a school. I figured, I'm better at that. So I didn't. The reason I thought of Taiwan then was because, in my work in America, I had gone for a PhD because I was appointed to the college, and so the most likely place they would send me with a PhD would be Japan, Taiwan, or the Philippines, because we had universities there.
Right.
And so a guy was being practical. I looked at that. So that's why I went. And Taiwan at that point had some people who were just gone out for studies. Sister Helena was one of them.
Yes.
She had just gone to work for her PhD, so they were looking for a replacement. So that's why I got there.
All right. So yes, any culture shock, does it mean that later on there was...
Well, later on, of course, some difficulties, and of course, you begin to discover new things, but not really. I didn't experience any serious culture shock in the way they call it. I have a friend who's read a lot of what I've been writing, and she works with people going to other countries. She lives in Washington, and she told me, I just read it last night just by chance. She says she hates the word culture shock. Because the culture shock says you go there and you're just hit with a big bang. And that's not the way it works for most people. For most people, it's just little things. The little thing, this is different, the food is different, the smells are different, the language is different, all these little things. And for some people, they accumulate,
Exactly, that's the word I thought about. Accumulation.
Right. So you have these little things that are different from back home add up, and then all of a sudden you feel you hate this place and you want to go home. This type of thing.
Or the other way around, that you, after these accumulated thoughts, you realize that actually I like this place and I would like to stay here.
Right. And that was my experience for Taiwan. Now, after I was in Taiwan for almost 20 years, and I came in 1974, and I had a sabbatical in 1990. And at that time, I went back to Boston. I was visiting a scholar at Harvard, and that's when I had culture shock. What they call reverse culture shock.
Yes.
When you go back to your own home country.
I understand. I understand that totally.
You know?
Totally, yes.
Then I realized, there's so many ways of doing things, and that I had gotten to like, and they became part of me. And when I went back to America, it wasn't quite the same as it was 16 years before.
Right. Yeah.
And so 3-4 months, the first 3-4 months was terrible. I mean, for many people, one of the difficulties in going to Taiwan is what you just said, the way you eat. Not only that, but I knew some people, young men who had come to study Chinese and working in an overseas training program I had begun in Taiwan. They positively reacted against using chopsticks. Not because of the difficulty, but or of eating out of the same pot. Putting your own chopsticks into the same pot with other people. Yeah. And it never occurred to me that that's a problem. I mean, I never had a problem with that.
Wow.
And and then also coming to Thailand, I had some difficulties with the spicy foods at first. But I wanted to taste the food of the land, and I've really got to like it.
Right.
And also when I've traveled in 20, 30 countries in the course of my life, and in every country the first thing I want to do is to taste the food.
Yeah.
So going back to the States, it was not a problem. So that wasn't the problem. The problem was more with the violence I felt in the streets in America. I mean, just the easy anger. Let's say somebody's driving and then show the finger or say some vulgar words to somebody if they didn't like the way they were driving it. I wasn't used to that in Taiwan. I had gotten used to a more direct approach in America than I had experienced in Taiwan. And part of it probably is also the kind of respect that Chinese gives to teachers.
Right.
That didn't count when I went back.
Right.
So it was things like that. Things like that would be more difficult. I knew about that before I came.
Right.
So I said, okay, if I'm going to live and work here, I need to live with that. I need to learn to accept it as much as I can. Internally, I didn't like a lot of it. I did not like the Jiaoguans on campus, and I didn't like the way they would disrupt the class to take roll call.
They did?
Yeah. I mean, well, they would come, and of course, many students would immediately be maybe shifting chairs, or they'd be running out to explain why they weren't there the day before or something. So I used to hate that type of thing, and also the general kind of military discipline and sort of indoctrination that was there. But I try to keep quiet on that. And in my own way, in my teaching, I tried to bring in other values as well, as much as I could. Knowing that there probably is some student in here who's going to report if I go out, if I say anything against certain topics.
Right.
I mean, at least it was the urban legend, whether it was true or not.
Right.
I presume it was true at the time. We more or less presumed that there was at least one student in every classroom there to check up on teaching.
So you were aware of these untouchable issues?
Yeah, sure. Very much. And then I would, try, I was teaching, not the first year, but in most of the time I was teaching American literature. So one of the ways I would try to do it is by inviting small group discussions, and then inviting the students to compare the values they see in what they're reading to Chinese values. For instance, Scarlet Letter. How would that go off in ancient China? How does it? What are the reactions to it in modern China? Or Benjamin Franklin. How is what he says in his autobiography close to some traditional values in China? So that way I would hope that I would just raise a few
And what did you find?
Issues from the first months in Taiwan is going into Taipei with a couple of other new teachers from the English department, and we had to go from the train station to Zhongshan Bay, in that area.
Right.
Just down, I forget the name of the street in front of the train station. Is it Zhongshan?
Taipei-qiao? No. Zhongshan-qiao?
No, not the bridge. No, I mean the street. You know, so just going down the street from the train station, just a little past Zhongshan Bay, anyway, the point is it wasn't very far. But I remember it took us about an hour because it was rush hour, you know, we're going to eat some Chinese meal.
Right.
And what I remember right around the train station was huge traffic jam. And the buses were all like the yellow school buses in America. You know, these with the motor up in front. You know, they were gone within a year or two, but that image is still in my mind. It's the kind of the yellow school buses that would go out in the countryside in America at the same time. Those students who really introduced me to, you know, Alishan, Yu Shan, of course down in Gaojiun, Bingdong.
Reach the top of the mountain.
Of Yu Shan? I went there once, you know, and I went with a group of students from the English department. I think within the first year or two, maybe the first 2 years.
Right.
And what I remember, we didn't go to the very, very top, but I got pretty close. No, I mean, we really got very close to it. We did get to the top, to the lodge, okay? And then from the lodge, some of us climbed higher.
Right.
But not to the absolute top. I mean, we could have gone a little further, but not much higher. You know, so we were really on Yushan. But going up there was really challenging.
Yeah, it is.
Because of the altitude.
But the main peak is okay. The difficult one is the eastern peak.
Yeah.
It was incredible because you really have to climb, not.
Yeah, we had to only for the last maybe half a kilometer at the most to climb.
Right.
Yeah, because there was a path. But what I mean is because of just going higher. And a good number of the girls were getting sick on the way up. And the boys would of course be helping them, encouraging them, and helping them to go on. And when we got to the top, I found out that some of them were very angry. That I was not helping the way the other boys were, you know, the other men were, And of course the reason I wasn't helping is because I was having difficulties too.
Yeah, especially
when
you travel around the island.
Yeah, probably, you know, Taroko.
Yes.
The Taroko Gorge is beautiful. And I did like it up in Alishan too. Not just because Alishan, the city itself, not that much, but the area around it. And I've gone there many times. And one time I remember going with one of the students from the math department to banana plantation of his aunt in, what's the county outside Taichung, up in the mountains.